Why are people saying the taxpayer pays? The taxpayer pays nothing towards William and Kate's housing costs. A couple has an elderly relative, 96 years old with failing health, who has recently lost her husband. She needs more support. They also have 3 children, 9, 6, and 4, who need to be cared for. They both have busy jobs, mostly based in London, where their rented offices and accommodation is, as sometimes need to stay overnight for functions. Their family home is in Norfolk, a property they own which was ideal for a family while the husband was working for the air ambulance service as a pilot in the East Anglia area. Demands from the family firm mean he had to give up the job he enjoyed and take on heavy responsibilities and move base to be closer to his family, but they hope they may get back to their home for short breaks and holidays. So they decide to rent a 4-bedroom property just a few minutes from their elderly relative and only a short commute to London for work. Their 3 children can all go to the same school just 20 minutes away and be very close to their maternal grandparents who can step up when mum and dad are busy. The family also has a small holiday cottage in Scotland left to them by great-granny in her will. Now, so far what have they done which is so outrageous? Would any other couple attract this criticism? All their rent and expenses are paid for by Prince Charles from his own private income. I am only too conscious of the cost of living, but this is the responsibility of our elected government. Who is manipulating this story for political reasons in order to undermine our constitution? Because they are not helping the British public by blaming people who are just trying to do their jobs and responsibly care for their families. How did the Crown Estate come into being? Although the ownership of some property can be traced back to Edward the Confessor, the estate as a whole essentially dates from the time of the Norman conquest. In 1760, George III reached an agreement with the government over the estate treasury. In return, the king would receive a fixed annual payment, what later became known as the civil list. The crown lands would be managed on behalf of the government and the surplus revenue would go to the. Today, the Crown Estate operates under the auspices of the Crown Estate Act of 1961, which declares that the estate shall be managed by a board who have a duty to maintain and enhance the value of the estate and the return obtained from it, but with due regard to the requirements of good management. Royal commentator Phil Dampier wrote, "I'm a fan of William and Kate, and it's good they will be living in modest Adelaide Cottage and the kids schooling together. But they are keeping KP apartment at Enmore Hall. Do they really need 3 homes?" Daily Express royal correspondent Richard Palmer agreed, adding, "And the holiday cottage on the Balmoral estate, Phil. 4 homes." He said, "For a couple who carry out so few actual engagements, it is unacceptable that it is taxpayers funding their extravagant livelihood. Not sure why the royals can't work for a living and earn their own money." Another, nicknamed Library of Life, at Library of Life, wrote, "Not a normal family, the school alone has an eye-watering cost." But many other commenters defended the couple, saying that it is reasonable for a future king and queen to have more than one home. Royal author Angela Levin wrote, "It's not disgraceful. The building is already there and is fit to use. It's also important for William and Catherine to be near the Queen. It is also ideal for the children's schooling." One Twitter user, Sean Carpenter, at Shanka123, agreed, writing, "I know people who aren't heirs to the throne who have far more than 3 houses. Give it a rest, sport." Anna Storace, at Storaceana, agreed, writing, "Stirring the pot for no reason. KP is their office and a London-based. Enmore Hall is their private residence. The current arrangement is to be closer to a particular school for their children." Meanwhile, Carol, at Hanachk, pointed out that Adelaide Cottage needed no refurbishment or additional costs to taxpayers. She added, "Many others have homes in multiple locations, as well as requiring no refurbishment. The cottage will also reportedly have no live-in staff, with aides commuting to the residence." A source described their new home as being modest. Speaking to The Sun, they added, "Adelaide Cottage fits the bill because it is a 4-bedroom home and they do not need any more as they have no live-in staff." They were adamant they didn't want anything too showy or anything that needed renovating or extra security so as not to be a burden on the taxpayer. The added bonus is they can send George, Charlotte, and Louis to school together locally. If people want something to moan about, have a look at how Harry and Meghan pay for their mansion with 16 bathrooms in California. They have set up their Archie Well Foundation, which is registered in Delaware, not their home state of California. This is because under state law 95% of the charitable donations they raise can be used for their expenses. This means that for every £100 raised the recipients to get £5. The remainder pays their mortgage on their mansion, designer clothes, fancy restaurants that Meghan loves, and their jet-hopping lifestyle. When Harry and Meghan went to Invictus in Holland, they charged the charity for their first-class travel and accommodation. The competitors had to raise their own funds to travel and stay. What Harry and Meghan are doing is legal. But is it moral? Do those clowns criticizing William and Kate want them to sell Kensington Palace? They're moving to a smaller home from estates owned by their mother, and yet they are still criticized? The clowns would rather who owned KP? Rich Saudi Arabians? Chinese fat cats? Good grief, I am glad we gave a royal couple who are sane and thoughtful. FGS, when are these wittering commentators ever happy? The KP apartment is to be used as their office for staff, and how many other people have weekend homes? These people just fuel the politics of envy. In truth, a furious row has not erupted. The only furious eruptions in evidence in ridiculous PR pieces today are those of Haz's nasty wife, enabled by her wet wimpish fool of a husband. $70 million a year for the royal family. But they bring in $1.2 billion per year into UK economy, so all in all great value for money. But it's sad when cheap media keeps stirring the pot to turn the UK people against its own royal family. The Express and other tube-it was only fit for wiping her. If they are leaving Kensington Palace, which does not belong to them, it is the Crown Estates, and they move to Windsor, again a property of the Crown Estates, they have to pay the market rent for it. Then Anmere Hall in Norfolk is the only home otherwise, so that makes two. Who says it is a scandal? Oh, I forgot Scooby-Doo, so that means a load of rubbish then. Apartment 1, Kensington, is rightly being used as the office of our future king. The Sussex fans seem to forget Harry and Meg had the cottage at Kensington till the wedding but wanted to live at the occupied but bigger apartment 2, next to the Cambridges. The royal couple who lived there agreed to move out, and after a prompt but huge renovation, the Markles moved in. Within weeks she wanted to move out. They chose a wing in Windsor Castle, asked the Queen for the go-ahead, and she said absolutely not. However, as she expected them to be working royals, she offered them Frogmore, where 5 homes were joined as one, specifically to their instruction and taste, resulting in a huge 10-bed luxury home, where I believe they only stayed for months before they scarpered abroad to get privacy to operate their new venture, selling goods with a Sussex royal brand, which was against the royal ruling and Her Majesty had to stop. No taxpayers' money is involved, and therefore it is no one's business how many homes, cars, etc. they have, and they definitely do not have to explain anything to anyone who's only interested in envy. It is not uncommon in the UK for individuals or families to own a primary residence in the UK as well as invest in overseas property in Spain, France, Italy, Greece, Cyprus, the USA, etc., and for others, also investing in properties in the UK to rent out. It's called their property portfolio, and it is building their financial security and independence. Prince William in his own right is a multi-millionaire, due to inheritances from his deceased mother and great-grandmother. His investment team has guided him and his family well, and his private wealth has grown accordingly. He is also supported financially by his father Prince Charles through the private revenues generated by the Duchy of Cornwall, and I am sure that his grandmother, our Queen, has assisted the Duke and Duchess of Cambridge financially from Her Majesty's private revenues generated from the Privy Purse, the Duchy of Lancaster, and her magnificent portfolio of properties which are again part of her private assets.